We'll turn to the book of Hosea, the Minor Prophets. Hosea is definitely, I don't know if we're allowed to have favourite books of the Bible, but Hosea is definitely one of my favourite books of the Old Testament. It's really a picture of God's love and God's mercy for his people. And I looked a little bit recently about the covenant that is marriage and how that is a type of our relationship with God. And Hosea was really used as a living example to show Israel exactly what they were doing in their relationship with God. And Israel at the time of Hosea was in a similar state to us in this nation today. They were quite prosperous, but they were turned away from God, and they were a bit like a slow motion car crash. You could see that they weren't going in the right direction. Something bad was going to happen. There was not going to be a good result from how they were acting. And that's kind of what we see today, really. We see that in the main, in general, things in this world and in this nation are not going in any kind of positive direction. And the message to the nation is the same now as it was to Israel in Hosea's day. And it was a message of restoration and a message of repentance, that God could bring back his people from the brink, bring back from darkness. And Hosea spoke this word for about 60 years. And sadly, for the most part, he was not listened to. He was not listened to at all. And let's just look at a couple of things. In Hosea 4 and verse 1, we read, "Hear the word of the Lord, you children of Israel. For the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there's no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood toucheth blood." So we can see a lot of familiarity there in the way that people were acting in that time to the way that people are acting now. Truth is not held up as something that is particularly important in a lot of spheres of life, sadly. Everyone has their own truth. There's certainly not a lot of mercy. There's not a lot of forgiveness. There's a lot of judging people quite harshly. We've all heard of things like cancel culture, for example, and what that stems down to is lack of mercy and forgiveness. Someone can say one thing or do one thing, and they're not even allowed to give an account of themselves. They're just written off, basically. They're written off, even if it's something that they maybe said or did 20 years ago. And I'm not talking about, the people who, are doing horrible things, abuses and whatever. It's usually just words. Someone says a word, some other people, a group of people take offense at it, and that's it. That person is written off completely because there's no mercy. And certainly it says no knowledge of God in the land. And sadly, there is no understanding really of the things of God, or it is certainly not what it once was. Swearing and lying, killing and stealing has taken many more forms nowadays with the dishonesty that people get away with, and various scams and things that people try and trap other people in, and committing adultery. Adultery, it's not even called adultery anymore. They've rebranded adultery in many different ways and made it fine and made it acceptable in this land. It's not even in many instances even seen as a shameful thing. And they break out, and blood toucheth blood. And you can just see in that image there, it's a description of a nation that is lost. And what is the consequence of that? "Therefore shall the land mourn, and everyone that dwelleth therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field and with the fowls of heaven. Yea, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away." it's an interesting description there that even the natural world will suffer because of what mankind is doing. And we see that now. You may, every now and then, you'll hear a bit of a highlight of people telling you that all the bees are dying. There's a big problem in the world that the bees are dying out. And that causes a bit of a huge problem because bees are pollinators and they help plants to grow. And due to different actions of mankind, we're facing a bee shortage. And if you actually look into these things and start to study what it could mean, if there's a complete collapse of the bee population, it's quite worrying, actually. It even talks about the fishes of the sea being taken away. And there are massive struggles nowadays with in many parts of the world because we've overfished. We've overfished in many parts of the world. I read something about there is, since we started into intensive fishing, there's now 95% less cod in the North Sea, 99% less cod off the coast of Canada, because we've just overfished, we've plundered, and we've taken more than the natural world can sustain. And these are some of the consequences of what mankind does. We have been made stewards of the earth, and we've polluted it, and we've let it down. And we'll go to Hosea chapter 6, and from verse 4, it says, O Ephraim, what shall I do unto thee? O Judah, what shall I do unto thee? For your goodness is as a morning cloud, and as the early dew it goeth away. So any goodness that is shown is fleeting. There's no foundation, there's no stability there. It comes and goes because people don't stand on the truth and they don't stand on God's law anymore. Verse 5, therefore have I hewed them by the prophets, I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and thy judgments are as the light that goeth forth. So the Lord tried to get them to recognize what they were doing by the words of the prophets. He tried to, it says, slay them by the words of his mouth. I believe that he's talking about conviction. He's talking about the conviction that the word can bring you into. And, you can't look for a remedy until you know that you are sick. Until you know that you are a sinner and you're not in a good state with God, you can't even try to find salvation. And that's the importance of the words of God. People need to hear them so that they can understand that they are in a place that they should not be. Verse 6, for I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. I talked about burnt offerings this morning, but the important thing is not that we do things for outward appearance or ritual. This is what Israel was doing now. They might have still been making their burnt offerings, at morning and evening, but it was a show. It was just a routine. It was just a tradition. They weren't doing it from their heart, and we could fall into that trap. You can even be praying every day or opening the Bible every day and not allowing it to sink into your heart, not really allowing the Lord to minister to you and to teach you, and that's a danger. That's a danger. It talks about it. He says, I've hewed them by the prophets, and to hew something is to cut it into the correct shape for use. So it's something that a carpenter may do, hew something into shape, and that's what the Lord tries to do to us or for us with His word, to be able to cut off the rough edges, cut off those parts of our life that we no longer need. We hear about it in the testimonies, the things that we leave behind when we come to the Lord, and He tries to shape us into a shape which is correct for the Master's use. Chapter 7 we'll go to, and verse 8, it says, Ephraim, he hath mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned, a half-baked cake. Basically, it was his description of the nation at that time, a half-baked cake. If you've ever watched one of the the baking shows, Bake Off or whatever like that, when someone takes their cake out of the oven and they expect it to be fully formed and it's just some deflated mess, it's hilarious if you're not in that position, but it's one of the most like deflating moments. You can almost see that person just sort of sag in despair because they know, well, it's too late. They can't fix it. They've got a half-baked cake, and that's what a nation without God is like. A cake not turned, a half-baked cake. There's half-heartedness. There is lukewarmness, and it's of no use to anybody. A half-baked cake is of no use to anybody. Verse 9, strangers have devoured his strength, and he knoweth it not. Yea, grey hairs are here and there upon him, yet he knoweth not. So it's describing a nation which doesn't even recognize that it has deteriorated, that doesn't even recognize that it's gone downhill. And this nation is very much one of those nations. There's a lot of valid pride, in being British and in what the United Kingdom has done in its past and in its history, but this nation has not really recognised that we have fallen so very far short from the heights of what this country used to be and the presence that we used to be in the world. Britain used to be a nation that was looked to and respected throughout the world for many, many good things, for the rule of law that we had here, for the word of God that we spread around the world, and for leading the way in so many things. And we have very, very sadly fallen away from that. We've got grey hairs, we've got no strength, and yet we don't know it. Verse 10, and the pride of Israel testifieth to his face, and they do not return to the Lord their God, nor seek him for all this. Ephraim also is like a silly dove without heart. They call to Egypt, they go to Assyria. So, there's no direction. There's no direction. A silly dove without heart is a dove that doesn't know where it's going. No understanding at all. And I realise this is it's been quite a negative framed talk, so we'll just skip to the end to look at the good ending, because otherwise it'll be a bit too doom and gloom. Hosea chapter 14, and from verse 4, and the Lord said, I will heal their backsliding, I will love them freely, for mine anger is turned away from him. His branches, I will be as the dew unto Israel, he shall grow as the lily, and cast forth his roots as Lebanon. His branches shall spread, and his beauty shall be as the olive tree, and his smell as Lebanon. They that dwell under his shadow shall return, they shall revive as the corn, and grow as the vine, the scent thereof shall be as the wine of Lebanon. So the Lord is telling us here that despite everything, even after everything, even after all of the failings, even after all of the backslidings, even after all of the turning away from God, being selfish, being unmerciful, even after all of that, the Lord is ready and waiting to receive us, and not just receive, but to bless. In verses 5 to 7, there's all of these wonderful descriptions of fruitfulness in the natural world. Dew, growing as the lily, casting forth roots, branches being spread, the beauty of the olive tree, the wonderful smell of the cedars of Lebanon, corn reviving, vines growing, the wonderful scent of the wines. All of these things the Lord will quicken us, he will make us alive and lively, and he will bring this flavour and colour into our lives. When the Lord talks about a more abundant life, it makes me think of a life that's if you've ever seen these films where it's like filmed in black and white, and then all of a sudden they sort of turn the colour on, and you see the colour coming into the world. That's what it's like when we're born again, and the Lord comes into our lives. We appreciate all of the things. Lee was just talking about the appreciation of God's creation there, and that's something that, without knowing the Lord, we can't look around and appreciate what he's done for us. And verse 9, who is wise, and he shall understand these things? prudent, and he shall know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the just shall walk in them, but the transgressors shall fall therein. So if we want to be wise and prudent, we acknowledge the ways of the Lord are the right ones, and those are the ones that we want to walk in. And if we do that, then everything that's happened in the past, all of the failings, all of the deficiencies, all of the grey hairs, none of that matters. We walk in blessing. We walk in blessing, and that's what the Lord wants.